Principal who was wounded during a shooting at an Iowa high school earlier this month has died. According to a post on a GoFundMe page to help with medical expenses, Perry High School principal Dan Marburger died Sunday morning. Marburger had been principal at the Des Moines area school for nearly 3 decades. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very busy sports Sunday. We start with the Rams. Impressive performance at Detroit, but they lose by 1. The Rams finished the season at 10-8. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua set an NFL record for most receiving yards for a rookie. 181 yards on 9 catches and 1 touchdown. The Chargers are in the news. They will be the first NFL team to interview Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh for their head coach position. The two sides are getting together in the next couple of days. The Clippers lose by 4 at Minnesota, 26 points for Kawhi Leonard. USC's women's basketball team handed UCLA their first loss of the season. The second-ranked Bruins lost by 8 in front of a sellout crowd at Galen Center. They were 14-0. USC freshman guard Juju Watkins had a game-high 32 points. The 5th time this season, Watkins has scored 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
It's been quite the show today as we celebrate the life and legacy, the work and witness of the man I regard as the greatest American this country's ever produced, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who would be 95 years old, where he's still living today. The first hour, a great conversation with Cornel West. In the second hour, an amazing dialogue with Michael Honey and Bill Fletcher Jr. We wrap today's tribute to Dr. King, reprising our conversation with USC Professor Hajar Yazdia about how right-wing movements have manipulated the legacy of Dr. King. Her book is called The Struggle for the People's King, and I believe her text helps us to better understand the interplay between history, politics, and race. Here now our conversation with USC Professor Hajar Yazdia. How are you today?
I'm good. It is so good to be here.
It's good to see you. I'm glad you finally made it. And the timing couldn't be better, more propitious as we move toward the King holiday.
That's right.
So I'm glad it all worked out. Let me start with a broad question. We got an hour here, so we'll work this out. And I'm looking forward to the dialogue, as I said a moment ago. I am curious as to what it is that drew you. One can tell by your name, you are not an African-American, not that one has to be, to love King and to work, to write about King and to research King. But I'm always fascinated by what it is about him that pulls in other people. So as a scholar, why King? Why Martin?
I think it's such a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talk in the preface about the fact that I am the daughter of Iranian political refugees,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in these predominantly white communities, Northern Virginia. And for me, there was always this question of, where do I fit in within this kind of binary landscape of white and black, kind of being in between and having those constant questions of, where are you really from?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me growing up, learning about the civil rights movement, watching these Hollywood films, always gave me this sense of catharsis because it felt like this was a moment where folks had stood up to the bad guys and that they had won. But I think the piece that, I say this in the preface, the piece that never sat right with me is that they had these happy endings. They always kind of made it seem like we solved the problem of racism and now everything was going to be great. You know, white folks and black folks were holding hands and it was just up from here. And that was not what I was seeing in my day-to-day life. The way that my parents were treated for having accents, you know, the way that I was invisibilized in school. And so for me, there was always this question, you know, if we think that racism is over, what do we lose? What are the conversations that we can't have? So it was in kind of learning these histories of Black thought as I was growing up. It was James Baldwin, Audre Lorde. I mean, these were really the folks that drew me in and made me realize I was not outside the system of race, right? I was part of it. And if anything, I was actually situated right within white supremacy where upward mobility looked like positioning myself around white people, you know, making them like me. So I think that was, for me, really the hook, where the civil rights movement always fascinated me. And then the fact that King became the face of the movement. That's really where I wanted to dig in and find out, for one thing, why is he the symbol that's so prolific? But then also, why has he been so whitewashed and sanitized?
Now you sound like my friend Cornell West.
That's right, the Santa classification.
You got, look at this. I love this. That's his line. Let me just ask, by the way, Dr. West is on this program on Monday. So on the King holiday, he leads us off Monday in our very first hour. Dr. West will be our guest, and so I look forward to that dialogue. That said, and we'll get back to West and some of his formulations perhaps later in this conversation. But I am curious again as to how, and I love the way you answer the question and give us a sense of your backstory, mentioning the names of Audre Lorde and James Baldwin and others, and obviously you're a scholar. But give me a better sense of how the Black freedom struggle around the globe for cultures everywhere informs, inspires, amplifies, educates. You take my point. It's just fascinating for me to see how other cultures are impacted and empowered by the Black freedom struggle, at which King sits in the center.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I think it always goes back to this crux of the people's histories and the fact that they get written out, and power is always distorting them because the last thing power wants is for the people to come together and rise up. And so the civil rights movement, the Black freedom struggle, is a story of folks that came together with such few resources, no power in society, no status, and based on their own kind of commitment, right, to the longer vision, the idea that maybe we're not going to see change tomorrow, but that it's somewhere in the future and that we're going to keep fighting for it. I think that's really what inspires all across the globe because it speaks to all kinds of people that are rising up from below. And I think the other piece is that it's a story of collective liberation. So it's this idea of the inescapable network of mutuality, right? The fact that we're all interconnected. And so there's no such thing as, you know, just one group being in a struggle by themselves. Like all of us will be liberated together if we can pull these threads apart.
I love it. Just getting started in this hour with Hajar Yazdia, professor at USC, sociology professor, talking about her work and witness as it relates to King and her book about the ways in which the political right have bastardized and demonized and pretzelized, twisted like a pretzel, his work and his witness. It should be a fascinating hour. I've been looking forward to this. I'm glad you tuned in right now to Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Haja Yazdia coming your way right now, professor at USC in the sociology department, and we are talking to her about her book that takes a deep dive. It's called The Struggle for the People's King. The Struggle for the People's King. And we're talking about the ways in which our friends on the right have hijacked his work, his witness, his life, his legacy, the meaning of his words. I have my favorites. I've got a top 5 of King phrases and words that they love to take and just, again, twist like a pretzel. Perhaps we'll get into some of that in this hour. We were talking to Professor Yazdia a moment ago about the black freedom struggle and the ways in which she is of Iranian descent, the way that so many cultures around the globe just love Dr. King and regard him and revere him in ways that even he's not treated and respected, I think, in this country. And that's fascinating for me. So let me just ask right quick, what do you make of the fact that around the world, movements for freedom, and I make the point that movements are rare. Your friend, my friend Cornel West, were discussing this the other day. You start with a moment. That moment builds momentum, and if you're lucky, that momentum turns into a movement. Momentum, and movement. But movements are very, very rare. But there are movements all around the world at which King sits at the center because he inspires them to do what they need to do. What do you make of his global impact in this world house, as he might put it?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things I always want to drive home is that it's not just King, right? Mm-hmm. It is actually the whole infrastructure of the civil rights movement, mm-hmm. and the way that their slow relational organizing on the ground is a model mm-hmm. for all kinds of movements that, again, are trying to rise up without any resources, without any power. And it's a way to show that movements take time. I tell my students this all the time. I teach classes on social movements. I tell them movement organizing is actually so boring. It is just, there's this saying that freedom is an endless meeting. And it's so true, right? But I think there's this perception, especially among young folks that are coming up, that the civil rights movement kind of plopped down, showed up in the streets, and made these huge gains, and that it could never be replicated. And I think folks around the globe, because they have studied those tactics, they have actually studied what the movement organizers did, it's much easier for them to pick up those tools and remake them for all sorts of different contexts.
It's a great line. Freedom is an endless meeting. Freedom is an endless meeting. Another great line. We're just getting started. She's dropping bars already. I guess I say it's going to be a great hour. Let me go straight into your book, The Struggle for the People's King. I'm always fascinated by the backstory, which is to say why and how scholars decide to do the research they do and to write the text that they write. So you told us earlier about how and why King impacted you in your life as an Iranian, but give me a deeper sense of why the text.
Yeah, this particular project comes from graduate school. So I'm at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This is the kind of Obama era, the 2010s. And I'm seeing all of these reactionary politics coming out. The Tea Party is rising up. There's this language of reverse racism that's everywhere in political discourse because folks are saying that Obama hates white people. And for me, it's this question of how is it that in all of these political invocations, they are using King's words. They are saying that Dr. King would be opposed to these special rights that go to Black Americans and minorities. They say he would be opposed to voting rights. And this question for me is like, how do we get to this point where this can be in a mainstream stage and be taken seriously? Dr. King's words flipped on their head and used against the very causes that he fought for.
So you start researching.
Yes.
Tell me the story.
Yeah. So, the project starts with really thinking about that Abigail Fisher case. And if your listeners don't remember, this is the mediocre white girl who didn't get into University of Texas at Austin. And she tries to take affirmative action to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, she's not successful. But now we've seen, that really starts off this trajectory of trying to repeal and using the words of King to do it. And so that's the case that gets me looking at legal cases specifically and thinking about this movement toward colorblind constitutionalism, which is the quote-unquote race neutrality in law that folks are fighting for. This is folks on the right. And as I'm looking at that story, that's when I realized that this is a long phenomenon. This does not begin in the Obama era. And I did not expect in the book to have to go and do my research all the way back to 1980, but that's what ended up happening because I realized that so many of these false uses, the distortions of history, were rooted in the making of the King holiday. And that is the 15-year battle from 68 to 83 when Reagan finally signs this law, begrudgingly, right? He does not want to sign it. And he hates King. He hates civil rights. He has fought against it. And it's a moment where the language he uses to represent King in that pivotal moment becomes the basis of so many of these co-optations.
Not long ago, we had a powerful hour on this program with Michael Eric Dyson, professor now at Vanderbilt, talking about he was here the day of the 60th anniversary of Reagan signing that bill into law. The 30th anniversary, rather, of Reagan signing that bill into law. And we talked about the fact that Reagan, to your point, did so begrudgingly. Didn't really want to do it. But more than that, to your point about Reagan not even being a fan of King, not liking King, I reminded the audience that day, as I remind the audience once again, that Reagan kicks off his campaign in Philadelphia, Mississippi. He does that where they murdered Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. That's where he announces. Now, this guy had been the two-term governor of California, but he goes all the way to Mississippi.
Wow.
To Philadelphia. I mean, some little small town. He's not even the state capital. It's not Jackson. He goes to Philadelphia to announce his campaign. Why? Because that is where they murdered Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. And it was clearly a shout out to states' rights. That's why he was there. But every time I think about this, my skin crawls because I was much younger then, of course. But to just think that a guy could choose a place like Philadelphia, a Republican, to announce his run for the presidency, and the fact that he got away with that, and got elected and then got reelected and is now an icon of conservatives in this country. But that's a bold and brazen statement, is it not?
It is. And it also has all these eerie echoes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about history repeating itself. It sounds just like the Trump presidency. And I think what's, scary is you go back and folks were really scared about Reagan becoming president. And Coretta Scott King has this quote where she says she's afraid if Reagan wins the presidency, we're going to see a rise of the KKK and start doing this work all over again. And the very next day, he wins. And you think about everything that happened during the Reagan era, the rollback of civil rights, the increasing wealth gap. There's so much that explains our inequality today that began in that Reagan era. So, for sure, I think the whitewashing of Reagan's own legacy is something we should think about because he strategically ties himself to King so that he can ward off these claims of racism and say, well, I signed the King holiday and I'm using his words. I'm just carrying on this legacy that behind closed doors, Reagan says is a strategy.
Yep. Take me back to Abigail Fisher. You teed this up. I want to know more. Take us back to that moment. I remember that well. I was in the media talking about it when it happened. Take it back to that moment and remind us specifically of the ways in which they used King's words, twisted his words, to make the case against affirmative action, which we now know has been gutted.
It is the same quote that everybody uses, which is to be judged by
the color of your skin, not the content of your character.
And you know what is sad is that in so many of these invocations actually flip it and they'll say, the color of your skin and not the content of your character. Or sorry, the reverse. Sure. But I think what's tough is that it becomes a way for all sorts of groups. So this includes anti-abortion groups, family values activists who are fighting against LGBTQ rights, gun rights activists. They all end up picking up these certain phrases, like you said, the top 5 that are used all the time, and using them to represent King as this guy who really just cared about colorblindness. We weren't going to talk about race because racism was over. His dream was just for us to be kumbaya. And he was a really nice guy. He didn't disrupt anything. And so you think about how he gets invoked to shut down dissent and shut down the challenges against systemic racism. So in that Fisher moment, this is one of these early moments where he's being used against affirmative action, even though during the battles for the King holiday, one of the Republicans who's fighting against the holiday says that King was himself a racist because of his support of affirmative action.
I remind this audience often that in all of King's writings, in all of his speeches, in all of his works, you will not find him ever uttering the phrase colorblindness. It is not a word or a phrase that he ever used. He did not believe in colorblindness, and so you will not find that word, that phrase, that formulation anywhere in his work and witness. You don't have to take my word for it. Go ask David Garrow, go ask Taylor Branch, go ask Claiborne Carson, go ask Lewis Baldwin. Any number of King scholars will tell you will not find that phrase ever coming out of King's mouth about colorblindness. That is not what Dr. King believed, but that, again, is the argument that they advance. I laugh when I think about the fact that so many Americans, certainly our conservative friends, act like King only gave one speech in his whole life. And then they act like that speech only had one line in it. And that's the one line they know.
Yes.
And then they take that one line, to your point, to flip it, to make their argument that King would be opposed to corrective programs like affirmative action because he wanted people judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. It just shows, again, they have no interest in really digging deep into King's work, into his corpus. That is not what he meant, but it's fascinating how they do that. Let me ask you how then, in your work, you see a through line from Abigail Fisher until now with people, again, misappropriating King's words.
Yeah, I mean, the story in the book actually goes back to the 80s. And so I actually do want to kind of take that longer view because I think it's important to show that it's an accumulation of these conservative strategies. I mean, through the Reagan presidency, it really is this fight for states' rights and rolling back civil rights. But during the Clinton presidency, the reaction to Clinton being a quote-unquote liberal is all of this kind of Newt Gingrich contract with America business where it becomes a fight against, LGBTQ rights. That's a really big one in the 90s because gay rights movement is calling themselves the new civil rights movement. And so they're not just countering it. They're not just saying, gay is not the same thing as black. They're also now claiming that they are the new victims. So they're saying that Christians are under threat. They are the new minorities. They are the new black people, and they're using King's words to do it. So that's how you end up in this kind of position of white victimhood that undergirds all of the culture. So you get a Fisher moment where white folks actually buy that, yeah, maybe they are the new minorities. Maybe they are under threat. Mm-hmm. And what I say in the book is that when you actually look at that trajectory, it predicts the Trump presidency. It predicts January 6th. It is no surprise that something like great replacement theory came about, this idea that white people are under existential threat, because that perception of threat has been building since the initial gains of the civil rights movement.
We know famously that Obama put a bust of Dr. King in the Oval Office. And I said many times, and no secret here, people know that I had some commentary during the Obama era. I voted for him twice, like everybody else, but there were times that I said publicly, and I stand by this, that I wondered what King was whispering to him at night when he was alone working late in the Oval Office. What was that bust whispering to you? Because if you grade King, if you grade Obama or any other politician, and Dr. West and I, trust me, we'll get into this on Monday. How do I know? Because the conversation's already been pre-recorded. I don't normally tell people that. But Dr. West was just in this studio. We pre-recorded the conversation that you will hear Monday on the King holiday. And Dr. West and I get into this. I won't tell you how he responded to it, but I will tease you with what the question was. I asked Dr. West, too many doctors around here, Dr. Yazdia, Dr. King, Dr. West. But I asked him, if we were grading American politicians writ large on a Kingian scorecard, how would they rate? And the Kingian scorecard has to be what King referred to as the triple threat facing this democracy: racism, militarism, and poverty. Think about that for a second. If you were grading every president, every member of the Senate, every member of the House, your local leaders, if you were grading them on a Kingian scorecard, that the greatest triple threat to this nation are those three things: racism, militarism, and poverty. We could add to that, of course, climate change and a number of other things now, but that was King's scorecard. If you were grading them on just what they've done on militarism, just what they've done on poverty and racism, how would they rate? That's how, when I go to the polls, I decide who I'm voting for. How do they stand up on King's scorecard? I raise that because we're in this moment now, obviously, of a political season. And we're talking about this through lines. I want to ask about Biden and I want to ask about Trump. Put you on the spot.
Okay.
So connect Biden and King for me and tell me what you see. And then connect Biden and Trump and tell me what you see. Take either in whatever order you want to respond.
All right. Ask the hard questions, Tavis. I see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for me, and I say this in the book, it isn't just the story of right-wing co-optation. Mm-hmm. It's also about liberal Democrats, right?
There you go.
The corporate establishment also doing this work of co-opting and creating colorblindness, kind of sweeping the issues under the rug. And they play the same game. And we can talk about how it's to different degrees, to different consequences, but it does the same thing of making it feel like we can never tackle the root causes. And so you talk about this scorecard, and I'm immediately thinking, like, I'm a really generous professor, and I would give them...
You grade on a curve?
Yes!
You grade on a curve?
They don't even need to, right? Because they're already doing so good in my class.
Yeah.
I would give them all Fs, right, on this scorecard. Because there has been no real reckoning. And this is something that scholars like Victor Ray and Hakeem Jefferson have argued. It's the idea that we never fully confronted the past. So yeah, we put a couple laws in place, and they were huge gains, right? They kind of created the infrastructure for multicultural democracy. But we never actually understood why America was to blame, and the fact that racism was built in. It was baked into every system in society. So without the reckoning, all you have is folks coming into office with varying degrees of commitments to, pursuing King's quote-unquote colorblindness, and all they do is recreate the problem over and over and over again. Power just protects itself.
And that is why she said earlier, and I'm still marinating on this notion, that freedom is an endless meeting. It ain't never over, right? Freedom is an endless meeting. How blessed are we to have Hajar Yazdia, professor of sociology at USC, as our guest in this hour. Her book is The Struggle for the People's King. More with her when we come forward. You're listening, and I'm glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth. Speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. BenefitsCheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Thank you for joining us on this MLK Day. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Kentucky, Louisville is celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day despite the bad weather. Governor Beshear joined Mayor Greenberg Sunday for the Keeper of the Dream program, which featured multiple performances highlighting Black joy and Dr. King's vision. Mayor Greenberg awarded the 2024 Freedom Awards to African Americans Carol Jones Clay and Senator Gerald Neal for their community service. The principal, who was wounded during a shooting at an Iowa high school earlier this month, has died. According to a post on a GoFundMe page to help with medical expenses, Perry High School principal Dan Marburger died Sunday morning. Marburger had been principal at the Des Moines area school for nearly 3 decades. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very busy sports Sunday. We start with the Rams. Impressive performance at Detroit, but they lose by 1. The Rams finished the season at 10-8. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua set an NFL record for most receiving yards for a rookie. 181 yards on 9 catches and 1 touchdown. The Chargers are in the news. They will be the first NFL team to interview Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh for their head coach position. The two sides are getting together in the next couple of days. The Clippers lose by 4 at Minnesota, 26 points for Kawhi Leonard. USC's women's basketball team handed UCLA their first loss of the season. The second-ranked Bruins lost by 8 in front of a sellout crowd at Galen Center. They were 14-0. USC freshman guard Juju Watkins had a game-high 32 points. The 5th time this season, Watkins has scored 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
Of course I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to clean tough messes off my stovetop and bathtub. But then I discovered I can also use it to easily clean my patio furniture and even my shoes. I'm hooked.
And when wipes won't cut it, I use Magic Eraser Sheets. They're thin and flexible erasers, perfect for everyday messes, like gunk on my counters and sinks. They really are magical.
The reviews are in. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and Sheets make cleaning look easy.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Jim Gaffigan here with some more Straight Talk. Let's take a moment to appreciate our sweet children, loving grandparents, and eternal soulmates. Now let's use them to save money on wireless. Because with the Straight Talk Silver Plan, you get 4 lines for just $25 a month with unlimited data and no contracts. So add those human pawns, loved ones, and save money. Thanks, kids. They're finally worth it. Straight Talk Wireless, available at Walmart.
Get 4 lines on Silver Unlimited for $25 per line per month, plus taxes and fees. For data management practices and additional terms, visit straighttalk.com.
Don't settle for bumps, ingrowns, and itch due to dry skin. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is here with the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area, featuring a razor with the patented irritation defense bar and skincare regimen that is dermatologist and gynecologist tested. Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about our full regimen of products.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Hajar Yazdia, professor of sociology at USC. Her book is called The Struggle for the People's King. As we head toward the King holiday on Monday, we are celebrating the life and legacy. Well, you know me, I'm celebrating King all the time. In every conversation, it seems to come up because I love him so, and I regard him, as this audience knows, as the greatest American this country has ever produced. That's my assessment. He is the greatest American we have ever produced. And yet I have concerns about the ways in which the farther we get away from his time on earth, he is being maltreated. His words are being bastardized and misused. He's being manipulated for people's causes and ends and aims. I'm troubled by that, as is Professor Yazdia, and that's why she wrote the book, The Struggle for the People's King. Let me start now by asking why it is you think, and we were discussing this a bit during the break, why you think it is that we are so afraid to wrestle with the radical king.
Yeah, the inconvenient king.
Yeah.
I think if you think about the way that power reproduces itself, power does not yield unless you make it. Mm-hmm. And so it has created the story that's top down, it's a story that gets handed down, it's institutionalized, it's protected by folks in power, including politicians and media. And that's the story that has to defang him. Because if we were to know the radical king, then he would become a kind of muse, right? And we would continue his unfinished work. And that's not to say we haven't. And actually something that I say a lot in the book is that it really has been Black communities keeping his true legacy alive. But that is not the legacy that shows up in the media, right? And I think one of the problems is the media complicity story. I talk about how in this quest to quote-unquote represent both sides, they have perpetuated these false histories. And if anything, those are the ones that are sensationalist, they get the front page, and so the resistance from below is just not getting the same due shrift.
Let me ask you this. When we talk about King and celebrate him, always seem to overlook a number of things, obviously, but one of those things, as it occurs to me, is that King was never afraid. As a matter of fact, his whole essence was about putting love in the center of the public square. I once gave a speech where I asked that question. My theme was, whatever happened to the notion of love in the public square? There are a number of ways to get at that. There's King, there's Bobby Kennedy, there's Mahatma Gandhi, there's even Mandela. There's so many ways to get at this conversation about whatever happened to the notion of love in our public discourse, in the public square. And by love, I don't mean that syrupy thing. I mean by love that everybody is worthy just because. Not because of your last name, not because of your pedigree, where you went to school, how many degrees you have, how much money you make, what neighborhood you live in, what kind of car you drive. No, none of that. The fact that everybody, each life is worthy and precious just because, full stop. That was King's essence, and that was his belief, as you well know. He put that in the center of the public square, and nowadays that seems not to exist. You talk about love these days, you get laughed out of the room, even with that definition. That's important to me because if we could ever accept that definition, King's definition of love, that everybody's worthy just because, and beyond accepting it, if we could actualize that in our politics, in our other work and witness in this country, that would mean that everybody would be treated a bit differently. If we're all worthy just because, that means that everybody deserves access to equal high quality education. It means that everybody has access to living in a good, decent, clean environment. You take my point. If we could ever actualize that, I raise that simply to ask why you think it is that in our celebration of him, we lose sight of the one thing that he put in the center of the public square. King said many times, as you well know, that love is the most powerful force in the world, the only thing capable of turning enemies into friends. And yet when we talk about him, we don't raise that issue. And those who want to take his words and twist them definitely don't want to do, they don't want anything to do with that part of King, that love notion, that love potion, if you will. What do you make of that?
I love that question, and I think about that all the time. I actually wrote an op-ed. It came out yesterday, and it thinks about his take on peace and the fact that for him, peace was not about the absence of tension. It was about centering this radical love. And I think a lot of it is the fact that our society is built on racial capitalism, which does not just prevent us from seeing love within other people, it's also preventing us from loving ourselves. And it's just easy to think about love as kind of ooey gooey, just be nice to one another sentiment that you teach children, but ultimately isn't a real way to live your life. I think a radical love that's actually based on common humanity and seeing the human dignity in every person, that requires a redistribution of resources. It is not just about a feeling. And I think it's the part that requires a shift in power, a shift in resources. I mean, that's the part that people don't actually want to get on board with because people do not want to give up things. And radical love does require giving things up.
I want to ask you a quick question before I do that, though. Tell me more about the op-ed piece. I'm fascinated by it, particularly as it relates to King and peace in this moment.
Yeah, I mean,
or the lack thereof, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's really how it was solicited, was thinking about how King actually felt about Israel and Palestine. And for me, I started the piece by saying, yes, we can look at these specific quotes. I mean, we've already seen Amy Schumer fighting. Bernice King had to fight back and say, my dad wouldn't say that. But that is not the argument we should be having, because what King actually believed in was this anti-militarism, where violence would beget violence. Violence would only create more strife, and it would be a cycle that would never end. And so when you think about that speech he gave at the Riverside Church, this is a moment where he stands up, and that political courage that it took in that moment, where 61% of the public was for the Vietnam War. And so it was a deeply unpopular stance to even stand against it. And he did it anyway, even though it meant losing political allies like President Johnson. He lost 50% of Black support after that. He lost civil rights leaders. And, you think about, you've written about the last year of his life. I mean, this is a moment when 75% of the public hate this guy. So you think about what it takes, the courage to stand for peace, And for me, it resonates so much with the way that we think about this moment, right? We could talk about safety and protection and all this, but at the end of the day, it's really about a radical revolution of values that he talked about, right? It's about centering love.
Yep. I'm glad you went there. You can't see my notes. You can read my handwriting anyway. But I just wrote down revolution of values.
I love it.
And here you come saying, I want to talk about that when we come forward. What that looks like. I just want to imagine that. Somebody, I had a guest on this program yesterday who dropped a powerful line. As you can tell, I get turned on by things that just expand my thinking. His line yesterday was that we have to consider and have a conversation about expanding our moral imagination. That was his line yesterday. We are in a moment. We're in a frame where we have to expand. Stretch was the word he used. We have to stretch our moral imagination. I'm going to do that when we come forward with you. I'm going to get you to stretch our moral imagination by considering what a radical revolution of values, Kingian style, would look like in this moment. Imagine that for me when we come forward. Her name is Sajjad Yazdia, professor of sociology at USC, author of the book, The Struggle for the People's King, and I'm glad to have her right now on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
This holiday season, Capital One reminds you to give yourself the gift of 1.5% cash back with the Capital One Quicksilver Card.
Can I earn 1.5% cash back on birds?
Birds?
What if you sent your true love 2 turtle doves plus a partridge in a pear tree?
Sure, but why would anyone want that?
The song was very convincing.
Earn 1.5% cash back on all your holiday purchases with the Capital One Quicksilver Card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
No, I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-DO.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Hajar Yazdia, professor at USC. Her book is called The Struggle for the People's King as we push our way toward the King holiday on Monday. This year it falls actually on his birthday, the 15th, and also the day of the Iowa caucuses. That's a whole other conversation. I'm troubled by the fact that we got Iowa caucuses for Republicans on the day that we celebrate King. I'm concerned because his story is going to get pushed to the margins. All this conversation about the Iowa caucus is going to push King's Day and his legacy to the margin, but you're going to get a lot of it on this program. So we're giving you an hour today, giving you more on Monday. I'm going to give you as much King as I can give you, so that Iowa caucus ain't all you get on his actual birthday. I digress on that point for now. I was saying a moment ago, following you were talking about resources and redistribution of resources, and you went right to that radical revolution of values that I wanted to get to anyway. So imagine for me, as my guest said yesterday, we have to stretch our moral imagination. So let's do that right now. We stretch our moral imagination and we try to imagine a world, a nation certainly, that is willing to wrestle with King's edict that we need a radical revolution of values. What does that look like?
Okay, I love this because it is not something sociologists get to do often, to do this kind of future imagination, but it's something I think about a lot in my own work. And I'm always talking about how we have to extend our political imagination. And so to think about the moral and the political actually working in tandem is a really valuable way to think about how a radical revolution of values, one that in King's sense centers dignity, it centers equal humanity, is one that does require reparations. It is one that does actually repair the sort of core harms that lie at the center of society. And so when I'm doing that kind of projection into the future, it's one where we've actually taken seriously, for example, his Poor People's Campaign. It's one where people have come together across all sorts of boundaries, right? Race and class. And they've thought about how they're actually standing in linked fate. So, I mean, that for me has always been the ideal, is that we stop thinking about it in terms of parties, like the Blues and the Reds and the Dems and the Republicans, and we start realizing that that is a project to keep us divided. It is the old game of divide and conquer, and that we're all suffering. So were we to come together, there could be revolution, not just of values, but of structures and systems. And we may actually be able to build the world anew.
When we come forward in our remaining moments, I want to ask you, given what you just said, how you would link in this moment in late modernity in this country, how you would link MLK and notions of restorative justice. How would you link MLK and notions of restorative justice? That's the question that we'll offer as our exit question to Professor Yazdia, who you're listening to on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Wendy's Breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles lets you choose your perfect duo from your fave 4, like a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in the combo. Single item at regular price.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
About this notion of a revolution of values, a radical revolution of values, and what that would look like in this moment.
Yeah. I mean, you asked about this question of restorative justice and how it's linked to King and how he kind of guides us forward, and this idea that, yes, so many harms have been committed, but is there some way for us to repair and come together? And for me, one of the greatest challenges of King's work is his conception of nonviolence, one that truly centers the radical love, that truly centers forgiveness and redemption. And I always say it's not even like it means you have to be happy and, kind of peaceful all the time. It actually means you can experience immense anger. You can have the full range of human emotion when it comes to the things that have been done to you by your fellow Americans, your fellow humans. But it does mean that from that space of kind of eruption of anger and emotion, you find your way to the inner peace that allows you to love this person and love these people across boundaries, across all of the perceptions of threat that are created around us. And so restorative justice is built into this concept, but it doesn't mean allowing people to get away with things. And I think that's where we go wrong sometimes, is we think, well, if we focus on the past too much, we're never going to move forward. You're just going to create a bunch of victims in society, and people are constantly going to be paying for their sins, even though they had nothing to do with this history of enslavement. That's not how I see it. I see reparations as freedom. I see it as a way for us to acknowledge, to confront, and then to work together to move forward.
I'm glad you shared that because as you were talking, I was thinking that I hope you're not going to ask me to surrender my agency to be outraged. I do not want to surrender my agency to be outraged when people take Martin's words and just abuse them.
We should be outraged.
Yeah.
And I think the pushback is the piece that's been missing. And not to say that, we haven't been tweeting, oh, that's not what he means. I mean, we have to come together and organize around that. And I actually think the Reclaim King movement that comes out of Black Lives Matter has been doing this beautifully. The King Center has been doing this beautifully. So folks have been doing this. It's much more about the rest of us amplifying it and then also pushing back.
To your point, what does it mean for everyday people, as Sly Stone might say, everyday people? What does it mean for us? I love the phrase, to reclaim King. How do we, in this season, in this election year, in this King holiday moment, how do we do our parts individually to reclaim King?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is going to require a process of soul searching, both individually and collectively. Do we want to keep kind of recreating the same systems over and over again, playing into a two-party system that does not represent our interests? Or do we want to extend and stretch our moral and political imaginations and try to imagine how we might actually start putting pressure on those systems? So that's one of the things I see, is that this is an opportunity for us to think about those triple pillars, right? Your Dr. King card that you talked about. How are we going to take on the interconnected evils of systemic racism, of militarism, and capitalism ultimately? Because when he talks about poverty, he's talking about this greed that emerges from capitalism. So I think these are the core questions that should take us into this election year.
I can't do any better than that. Those are the core questions that should take us into and through this election year, which starts in earnest on Monday with the Iowa caucuses on the King holiday. So I think there's a great moment to link those two things together based on the questions that you've just raised for us that we need to be wrestling with throughout this year. Her name is Hajara Yazdia, professor of sociology at USC. Her book is called The Struggle for the People's King. The Struggle for the People's King. I've delighted so much in having you in studio. This conversation has been amazing for me and for the audience. I thank you for your time. Wish you nothing but the best the rest of this year.
Thank you so much.
That's our show for today. Hope you enjoyed this special King Day edition of Tavis Smiley. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for joining us on this MLK Day. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Kentucky, Louisville is celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day despite the bad weather. Governor Beshear joined Mayor Greenberg Sunday for the Keeper of the Dream program, which featured multiple performances highlighting Black joy and Dr. King's vision. Mayor Greenberg awarded the 2024 Freedom Awards to African Americans Carol Jones Clay and Senator Gerald Neal for their community service. The principal, who was wounded during a shooting at an Iowa high school earlier this month, has died. According to a post on a GoFundMe page to help with medical expenses, Perry High School principal Dan Marburger died Sunday morning. Marburger had been principal at the Des Moines area school for nearly 3 decades. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very busy sports Sunday. We start with the Rams. Impressive performance at Detroit, but they lose by 1. The Rams finished the season at 10-8. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua set an NFL record for most receiving yards for a rookie. 181 yards on 9 catches and 1 touchdown. The Chargers are in the news. They will be the first NFL team to interview Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh for their head coach position. The two sides are getting together in the next couple of days. The Clippers lose by 4 at Minnesota, 26 points for Kawhi Leonard. USC's women's basketball team handed UCLA their first loss of the season. The second-ranked Bruins lost by 8 in front of a sellout crowd at Galen Center. They were 14-0. USC freshman guard Juju Watkins had a game-high 32 points. The 5th time this season, Watkins has scored 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black. Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Welcome forward now. You're listening to the Millionaires Roundtable. I am your host, Lynn Richardson, here on KBLA Talk 1580. And we are creating millionaires, one family at a time, one day at a time, $1 at a time, and one dime at a time. And that means you. So I received a message from a family member that basically said to me, girl, you are the queen of hustle. Because she saw a flyer or something for an event with my information on there about getting something. And, one of the things that I learned very quickly from Russell Simmons and many others, I mean, you see folks out there, is how to create things, services, products that the world wants and needs, and how to monetize them. And in fact, one of my favorite classes that I teach at New Wealth University is passive income streams. So today, here to talk to us about passive income streams in the entertainment industry is my sister, our legend, your icon, MC Light. Welcome to the roundtable, MC Light.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So you've certainly made millions in entertainment over the decades. And I think it's one of the areas when I talk about passive income streams, I think people are always thinking about hard or I should say real opportunity. So real estate or a store or a franchise. But I don't think people really understand that there are so many other ways to use creativity, to use your mind. It's one of the things that our trademark attorney, Michelle Miller, talks about all the time, how we come up with these witty inventions and these great ideas, and no one owns the rights to them, or we don't own the rights to them, and someone else does. And then they take our ideas and monetize them. So you started out in the industry writing, but earlier on, you weren't necessarily, you were writing your own rhymes. Were you getting paid for the publishing from writing your own rhymes? And how does that work today? Because we see so many cases where people, they're famous, they're the ones singing the song, but they didn't write it, so they don't make the money from it.
Yeah. Funny you should ask about that, because I was talking to a friend, and he was telling me a whole nother way that the system actually usurps the money and how it is that they present it as something else. But the question that you asked me...
what is that system? Because you can't just leave us on that.
Okay.
What are they doing?
Well, the system is, as a producer, when you're out there making music, people start to hear of you. Just like in the church world, you start singing. People knew about Whitney long before she made it to the front of the stage because she had been singing at other churches. So all of that to say, producers, when they start to produce tracks for people, they begin to make a name for themselves. And especially, at the front of the track, you'll hear mustard on the beat, or,
I used to wonder, who is this in the background? And
right.
Did they just randomly say that?
No.
Of course, now in the industry, like I go back and listen to all the Mary Mary songs. We knew Mary, but now Pastor Campbell, I'm hearing his voice all over the track.
Exactly. Yeah, so producers, they know that they ordinarily don't get a lot of shine or get a lot of notoriety for what it is that they do unless you're in the music business and you search for who intentionally is looking to know who produced this song, which, by the way, the Grammy organization, which I was the president of the LA recording chapter for quite some time, they made it their business earlier on in the days when they started these streaming services. They were concerned that people wouldn't get their just due with credits. And now, purposefully, you can go when you're on Spotify or when you're on Tidal or any of these streaming companies, you can look and see who wrote and produced the records. I have time in this break to continue, my sister. Okay, so what happened was this publishing is a big part of the music industry. In fact, it is the most money to be made, but probably the least spoken about when artists are being turned on to music and wanting to become an artist.
And so is that intentional? Because it's the most money to be made, but nobody's talking about it. But the ones who are making the money know that it exists.
But it's the behind the scenes. It's the business part of the entertainment, which most artists aren't really consumed with. They want the spotlight. They want the shine and be in front of the cameras. And most of them, don't handle the business until they find out about the business.
Well, that's because a lot of people think, I often say, let me put it this way. Most wealthy people aren't famous, and most famous people aren't wealthy. And so we have people coming out into the industry. And I'm not even just saying the entertainment industry. I'm talking about just visibility, period, because the world is now so open. But people want to be known and people want to be seen. And they think that being seen and being known is where the money is. But I say often that, especially living in California and living particularly in Los Angeles, there's a whole lot of wealthy people that nobody knows their name. Mm-hmm. And they are far more numerous than the people who you do know their name. So I'm sorry, I keep on interrupting you.
No,
get to your point.
It's all good. It's all good. So in any case, what I did find out is when you're making these songs, you're getting your music out there as a producer, which, by the way, producers, if they don't sample, they are destined to make 50% of the song without having to write a word.
Okay.
Because their contribution in terms of music is worth minimally 50%.
Yeah.
And so what I found out is that once you start to build up this name, you've got 10 songs, now you got 15 songs, 20 songs, most people will tell you, wait, do not do a publishing deal at that point, because you're still raising the stakes for what it is that they will offer you in terms of an advance.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time that's happening, your songs are accruing money because they're being played on the radio, they're being played on streaming services, they're being played in several areas. And so in Europe, they're already putting your docket together with all of your money, right? So what happens is in the States, you're unaware of that, but publishing companies, they are well aware of that.
They're very aware.
So they already know what it is that you've accrued on everywhere else, and so they will in turn offer you an advance worth that amount of money.
Wow. And we're going to talk about these advances and how lucrative they are, because I think people are really shocked to know that if you know how to make music, and we'll talk about that too, what's possible. The harvest is here. The time is now. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
More of the Millionaires Roundtable with Lynn Richardson when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
When you're young, life is full of choices. Don't let opioids like highly addictive and deadly fentanyl take away your life with just one wrong pill. Addiction is a disease that can affect anyone at any age. But there is a choice to get help for this disease. Find medically proven treatment options, including virtual, at choosemat.org.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio. KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward now. This is the Millionaires Roundtable here on KBLA Talk 1580, and this is Lynn Richardson, and we are creating millionaires one family at a time, one day at a time, $1 at a time, and one dime at a time, and that means you. We're talking about passive streams of income, not the regular kind that you often think about from the stock market or real estate and, investing in franchises, but using your mind, your creativity. MC Light is here with us. MC Light. So people can make money off of publishing.
Yeah.
Publishing is simply writing a song and writing the music, owning the song, owning the song, creating the beat. So creating the beat is a part of writing the song?
Creating the beat and creating the lyrics. So creating the music that goes with the song and creating the lyrics. Those people, in fact, should own the song.
Correct.
But I'm going to, because this comes back to your original question, but we're going to stay on the track we were. And that is when you haven't gotten a publishing deal yet, all of your money is accruing.
Yeah.
People are watching. Publishing companies are watching.
Yeah.
And then also in Europe and in Asia and all of these other countries, all these other territories, the money is accruing. So when a publishing company in the United States comes to a young producer who has done all these tracks and says, we want to offer you $500,000, it is with the intention of you paying that $500,000 back. So now you got to go out there and hustle up. You got to do a certain amount of songs. You got to own a certain amount of the songs out there to get that money back into the system, when in fact, you've already made the money because the money is overseas.
Wow.
So when you do the publishing deal, it gives them the right to collect monies wherever they are in your name.
Wow.
So they've already
see the money.
Girl, they act like they're giving you $500,000 out of their bank account.
Right, but they already got the money.
They already collected the money from somewhere else, and now they're lending the money to you. So now you gotta go work
to go.
It's something else, girl.
Really?
Yeah, it's a mess. But it is how the industry was built. So many people just accept it. So when I say you as a producer, you as a writer should own the song because you did all the work, that's not always how it goes. And this goes back to your first question when you asked me, when I first came into this business, did I own my publishing? Yes, I owned a portion of my publishing, but so did somebody else.
Yeah.
So usually it's, 50% of the publishing has been the standard for many years as to what a record executive would want. And this is why everybody was up in arms with Puffy. And still the same reason why some people may not even show up to the Bad Boy reunion or the festival is because he took 50% of everybody's publishing that was on his label. But the record label I signed to did the same thing. It is one of those, dare I say, mafia moves where it's like, this is what we're gonna do. We're working just as hard as you artists.
Yeah.
If not more, because once you get off the stage, they're still working.
Yeah.
They're still working to get you on the shows, to get the radio, so they feel like the only way to assure ourselves an opportunity to get paid just as an artist does is we're gonna take 50%. And at the time when I signed my deal, I didn't have a problem with that because the only time people are going to give you everything in terms of working for you and with you is to give them ownership of something.
Yeah. And I mean, this may be a separate issue, but in the movie Ray, we learned that Ray Charles owned his masters, which I'm understanding now was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And he was able to broker that because he was making music that nobody else could or had or possibly even would. But to your point, so you mentioned, and this has been, I guess, controversial. Folks aren't coming to the Bad Boy reunion because they don't own the publishing.
Well, some people come.
Some people come.
Jada Kiss and the guys came when they just did the BET Awards. Faith showed up.
Yeah.
Even Sean.
And my thing is come. Like, why would you not come? Because you don't own something that, I know you created it.
Because they felt bamboozled. It's just like with LA and Babyface when they had LaFace Records and TLC was screaming that they didn't make any money and Tony Braxton was screaming they didn't make any money. And because the deal that they received from Clive LaFace was a certain percentage. So then the percentage that they gave to the artist was even less.
Yeah.
And so people get upset when they learn how the business works. They feel taken advantage of.
Well, I do feel like, now I feel like this. If I am the new Puffy, Lynn Puffy Richardson. Girl, I'm about to start me a record company or something. I don't know. We already have one, don't we? We'll talk about that later. Here's the deal, though. If I'm making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I signed an artist, and I put together a transaction, and that artist was able to make some money, and I was able to make some money, but that artist is no longer making any money because the artist is whatever, out of style, can't get a record deal or what have you. And if I'm still making money, I personally feel like I should do something to help that person.
You really should.
I shouldn't keep making millions of dollars and you have nothing.
Yeah, it happens.
I have a problem with that. Like I wouldn't be able to wake up every day. I wouldn't be able to look at the person. I wouldn't be able to walk down the street or see them at an event and know that they're struggling and know that I'm still making money off you and I don't do anything to help you. Even if I decide, which this is crazy, and you all always talk to me about this, but it's just how I am and who I am. Even if I decided I'm going to cut a new deal, I know that we originally agreed that I would get 50%, you would get 20%, but I'm still doing well, and I want to help you do well. So we're gonna meet, come to my office. I want to put together a strategy, but I'm also going to give you the resources to make that strategy come to fruition. And I just, my biggest issue with this whole wealth building thing with us as people of color, and I'm just going to say as African American people, we are not wealthy because we don't help each other. I will say that as long as there's breath in my lungs. And I feel like if we collaborated more, if we cared more. Now, of course, there's the other side where you can't help everybody because people have to help themselves. But I do believe if I'm in a position to have influence over someone and help them and flow some of my power, I do believe that I can put some boundaries in place and some stipulations and some steps. Okay, you got to do this. You got to show up. You got to, what have you. So anyway, I've gone on off of my soapbox, but there's money to be made. Who can be a producer? Because I think this is not something that I knew growing up that you could do. Now, I can't make any music. I play the piano. That's about it. I had a stint with the clarinet. But who can make music?
You can be a producer.
Okay.
Because you know rhythm.
Right. So because I've been in the record studio. I've been in the studio a few times.
Your drummer.
Yeah.
Or your track person that puts your tracks together. You could hire a beat programmer. You could hire a pianist, a guitarist, a horn person. You can put all of those things in place. And see, that's how Puffy became a producer.
Got it.
And even Berry Gordy.
Berry Gordy, Puffy, Timbaland.
Timbaland.
Not Timbaland.
Timbaland makes his music.
Okay.
But it's for the musician. It's for someone who isn't a musician but can still put music together.
All right. So I know beats. When I hear them, I'm like, that's going to work. That's not. So
that's an executive.
Okay. Well, but I go to the studio too every now and then.
Well, then be a producer.
Anyway, the harvest is here. The time is now. There are ways to make money in the music business and entertainment in general. The harvest is here and it's your season. Hi, I'm financial expert Lynn Richardson. You may have seen me on Good Morning America, The Steve Harvey Show, or Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell. Guess what? Did you know you can get your money back if you hire your kids? You can get your money back if you go out to eat. You can get your money back if you go on a vacation. Well, guess what? In my book, Get Your Money Back, Tax Deductions You Never Know About, I'm going to teach you how you can get your money back with your home-based business legally, ethically, and all with the permission of the IRS. Just go to AskLynn.org. So we're talking about passive income streams and how to make money in the entertainment industry. And I'm not just going to say entertainment. I'm just saying in the world, because I almost feel like the whole world is entertainment. I'm watching the hearings. That's entertainment. Like everything is entertainment. There's some entertainment value in almost everything that we experience when we open our eyes every single day. But clearly, the music business has been a place. In addition to publishing, and I guess right now publishing is really the only way to really make money in the music business, because people aren't buying records and albums anymore.
Well, no, there's a combination of things that can take place as an artist to accrue money, and that is publishing, performances, partnerships, sponsorships. There are merchandise. There are several different ways, product placement and things of that nature.
Okay, so all the things that we do for you, the company, every time we do something with you, when you would put out an album, we'd have this grid of all the places that you could. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you know what's, I'm not quite sure where it is right now, but there was a big uproar because there were a bunch of artists who hadn't written anything, but who sang the mess out of a song. And I remember the Recording Academy, which, by the way, everyone thinks perhaps the Grammys is just about an award show. And it's not. They work all year long to bring justice in areas where artists and musicians are being taken advantage of. And so they were on a mission to have someone like Aretha Franklin paid when you heard her music on the radio. Because up until a few years ago, everybody who sang, who did not write or produce, and there were many artists that didn't, for years and years, didn't make a dime when the music played on the radio.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
This is a problem.
So the Recording Academy was going after radio so that they would pay just a few more dollars a year so that artists like Aretha Franklin and Natalie Cole and all of these wonderful, blessed, talented singers would make some money, including Whitney Houston and a whole lot of other folks whenever the record would play. But radio was fighting back. And as a matter of fact, Yolanda Adams was an advocate for getting these artists paid, and a lot of radio turned on her.
Wow.
Yeah, they turned on her.
Wow. So the institution,
because she had a radio show.
Yeah.
You remember, she lost that show.
Yeah.
Because of the stand that she was taking.
Yeah, people want to say she lost the show because of other things. But yeah, I think it is because of the stand.
She was
and the
vocal,
stand,
and she was using her platform on a radio station to talk about it.
She was using her platform.
She was calling them to the table.
She was calling them to the table, and then they retaliated, and then when someone retaliates, then there's a position that you have to take. And I think people interpreted that position as if she wasn't friendly or something. No, she's friendly. She's just telling on y'all.
She was standing up for all of the people whose shoulders she stood upon as a singer. And
well, this is one. Well, we get the opportunity to talk every day on talk radio, because I was going to say this is one of the ways we can work with KBLA and WVON, but these aren't music stations. Because I'm sure if there was a music component, we'd figure out a way to make sure that folks are winning. If you're making money off of playing a song, then let's make sure everybody gets a piece of the pie. But you know what? Hey, this is just what it is. There's music. Let me tell you the industry that really has just blown my mind. Television and film. Like, for every movie you see on the screen, there's probably 1,000 that never made it. But people made money. For every TV show that you see that comes out in the fall or, after pilot season, for every one that you see, who knows? Are there thousands, hundreds of thousands that didn't make it and folks made money? So there is money to be made there for writers, for directors, for producers. I've had the privilege of working on just about every major network over the past couple years as just a financial personality. And I've had the privilege of being able to help some, when I get off the stage, they're like, Lynn, can I talk to you? And these people are making money. Like, they're making money. So in the TV world, how can someone be able to start to monetize that? I'm just a regular person listening to this, or driving the school bus, or taking care of my kids, How can I start making money in the TV and film business?
Well, I would say the first thing is to have the onset of being in service, because you've got to climb the ladder. No one's going in starting at the top unless you have all the money. And if you have all the money, then what are you doing here? You
Correct.
You do it somewhere else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're interested in writing, I would just say gain the skill set. There are lots of programs out there, writing boot camps, all sorts of vehicles that you can take to become a great writer.
Yeah.
Because if you can imagine, there's already great writers in Hollywood. So when you write something, it has to be so spectacular that it supersedes anything else that anybody else is doing.
And it needs structure, because I know how to write. I know how to tell a story, but I don't know how to write. Right. And I don't have the patience with myself to learn. I'm like, you all want an arc and this. Look, this is what happened. This is entertaining enough just to hear what happened. But I think that there are a lot of people out there who have great imaginations, who are creative and know how to put together something that doesn't exist and make it feel like it does exist, and then give it the structure. Because, oh my God, I'm a systematic person, but television and film is super duper systematic. We have more. The harvest is here and the time is now. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Vice President Kamala Harris is in South Carolina to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
An organizer who moved the minds, the hearts, and the feet of the American people.
On the State House steps, the vice president talked about freedom as a right of all Americans. Harris also slammed extreme Republicans for restricting the freedom to vote. The 25th annual King Day at the Dome event also featured NAACP leaders and other civil rights activists. Freezing weather has canceled one of the biggest Martin Luther King marches in the nation. San Antonio is facing freezing weather and, in some places, slick streets. The decision to cancel the parade was made out of safety concerns. It normally attracts well over 300,000 people annually. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very busy sports Sunday. We start with the Rams. Impressive performance at Detroit, but they lose by 1. The Rams finished the season at 10-8. Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua set an NFL record for most receiving yards for a rookie. 181 yards on 9 catches and 1 touchdown. The Chargers are in the news. They will be the first NFL team to interview Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh for their head coach position. The two sides are getting together in the next couple of days. The Clippers lose by 4 at Minnesota, 26 points for Kawhi Leonard. USC's women's basketball team handed UCLA their first loss of the season. The second-ranked Bruins lost by 8 in front of a sellout crowd at Galen Center. They were 14-0. USC freshman guard Juju Watkins had a game-high 32 points. The 5th time this season, Watkins has scored 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Hey! Welcome forward now. This is the Millionaires Roundtable here on KBLA Talk 1580, and this is Lynn Richardson, and we are creating millionaires one family at a time, one day at a time, $1 at a time, and one dime at a time, and that means you. We're talking about passive streams of income, not the regular kind that you often think about from the stock market or real estate and, investing in franchises, but using your mind, your creativity. MC Light is here with us. MC Light. So people can make money off of publishing. Yeah. Publishing is simply writing a song and writing the music, owning the song, owning the song, creating the beat. So creating the beat is a part of writing the song?
Creating the beat and creating the lyrics. So creating the music that goes with the song and creating the lyrics. Those people, in fact, should own the song.
Correct.
but I'm gonna, because this comes back to your original question. But we're gonna stay on the track we were, and that is when you haven't gotten a publishing deal yet. All of your money is accruing.
Yeah.
People are watching. Publishing companies are watching.
Yeah.
And then also in Europe and in Asia and all of these other countries, all these other territories, the money is accruing. So when a publishing company in the United States comes to a young producer who has done all these tracks and says, we want to offer you $500,000, it is with the intention of you paying that $500,000 back. So now you got to go out there and hustle up. You know, you got to do a certain amount of songs. You got to own a certain amount of the songs out there to get that money back into the system, when in fact, you've already made the money because the money is overseas.
Wow.
So when you do the publishing deal, it gives them the right to collect monies wherever they are in your name.
Wow.
So they've already
see the money.
Girl, they act like they're giving you $500,000 out of their bank account.
Right, but they already got the money.
They already went and collected the money from somewhere else, and now they're lending the money to you. So now you gotta go work
to go.
It's something else, girl.
Really?
Yeah, it's a mess. But you know, it is how the industry was built. So many people just accept it. So when I say you as a producer, you as a writer should own the song because you did all the work, that's not always how it goes. And this goes back to your first question when you asked me, when I first came into this business, did I own my publishing? Yes, I owned a portion of my publishing, but so did somebody else.
Yeah.
So usually it's, 50% of the publishing has been the standard for many years as to what a record executive would want. And this is why everybody was up in arms with Puffy. And still the same reason why some people may not even show up to the Bad Boy reunion or the festival is because he took 50% of everybody's publishing that was on his label. But the record label I signed to did the same thing. It is one of those, dare I say, mafia moves where it's like, this is what we're gonna do. We're working just as hard as you artists.
Yeah.
If not more, because once you get off the stage, they're still working.
Yeah.
They're still working to get you on the shows, to get the radio, so they feel like the only